Welcome to Speak Out Charlotte. I'm your host, Jim Puckett. Thanks for joining us tonight. We get together every Tuesday night to talk with people who are involved in Charlotte-Mecklenburg region to talk about the challenges we have, the opportunities we have, and any general information that we think will make your life and you a better informed person.
Good evening. Welcome to Speak Out Charlotte. Wayne Powers in for traveling Jim Puckett, and we're sure glad to have you aboard because this ought to be a really interesting half hour, and informative one too. We're sitting here with our freshman congressman, Robert Pittenger from the 9th Congressional District. Welcome, sir. It's good to have you back.
Good to be with you.
How does it feel to be a freshman?
I enjoy it. It's a good concept. I like
it. It is. It gives you a little bit of a youthful pep in your step, I'm sure.
Well, you need a lot of youthful pep up there.
I want to talk to you about, we talk about whatever you like to talk about. There's so much to talk about. All you do is open the newspaper today, and there's so many important issues facing us. But let's start out talking about what it's like. You served us in Raleigh, and now you're serving us in Washington, D.C. It has to be a huge change for you personally. It has to be a major adjustment. Talk to me just a little bit about, the culture shock, maybe what you expected that sort of wasn't exactly the way you might have expected it. Give us a little idea of the growing pains of landing in Washington, D.C. in this day and age, and trying to do what you've set out to do. Well, give us a little bit of insight there.
Sure. Well, it frankly has had a lot of surprises. Wayne, one of my biggest surprises is really the competence of a lot of the people that I had the privilege of working with. I was really expecting to go there and there'd be a lot of just political hacks who knew how to get elected. I'm on Financial Services Committee. I worked real hard to get on it because I felt it was really important for our region.
Right.
There's probably around 3,000 businesses that come under the umbrella of financial services just in our region. And
give us an example of a few of them so we really understand what you're talking about.
Well, obviously the banking centers, right, but financial planners, right, all the real estate development, whatever.
Exactly.
And so anyway, the folks in our committee, very bright, articulate people. In fact, I was given a manual about that thick from the chairman.
Wow.
And all legalese, very complicated. In fact, I went up to him 2 days later on the House floor, and I said, Mr. Chairman, I want you to know I memorized your manual. He said, you did? I said, well, not really, but I did call 5 attorneys to explain it all to you.
Right.
So it's been a real fire hydrant,
yeah,
of just a lot of information. We went through half a dozen conferences and briefings prior to being sworn in. There's been a lot to absorb, and the issues are so great for our country that I really wanted to be prepared. My days are long. I leave my condo at about 20 minutes to 6 every morning, and I get home about 9:30 or so every night.
It's a long day.
It is a long day.
It's a long day, but you're enjoying it, I'm sure.
I've never been more challenged. I've never been more fulfilled.
Yeah.
I've never been more energized and exhausted every night, but ready for the battle.
Yeah.
We're in a battle. We're in a battle for the future preservation soul of this country, and it demands all of it, all that we can give.
Now, serving in the House of Representatives, your party, the Republican Party, it was also my party. We got to be above board here. In the majority, mm-hmm, Senate, not that way at all. So, how frustrating is it to have sort of two dynamics at play? The Republican Party really in charge of one of the three major houses of government. You've got the Senate controlled by the Democrats, the executive branch is controlled by the Democrats, and so you're alone sort of there, one out of three. You can't really do anything on your own. You've got to craft stuff that can get through both houses and hopefully are signed by a Democrat president. How does that work, and how has that frustrated you, or are you finding ways and opportunities to make that happen?
Well, I'd have two responses to that. The first would be a great statement by Margaret Thatcher years ago. She said, you win the argument and then you win the vote. And I'm proud of the people that I associate with because we're there to stand for principle. We're there to win the argument. We're trying to turn the ship around. We're sinking. We're $17 trillion of debt, $1 trillion, annual deficits. It's incomprehensible to me that people can manage like that. But we've held the line. No budget, no pay got their attention. forced the Senate in 4 years to come up with our first budget. We went back to them with the automatic cuts, known as sequester, $85 billion there. That had to be done. We had to start the process to bring some financial accountability back. And then we got into a continuing resolution, which funds the government. They supported, they voted for, the Senate as well joined us in the House to vote for those same sequester levels, that $85 billion reduction. So we got them on the defense in that position. Now, on the other side of the coin is you have to work with them. And you've got to figure out a way in our country that we can find common ground. When I was when I started in these freshman conferences we had, I met some business-oriented people on the other side of the aisle who were freshmen. In fact, Peter Orszag, who used to be the budget writer for Obama, said something Obama hadn't said, that Pelosi hadn't said, and Reid hadn't said. He said, you've got to deal with the deficit, you got to deal with the debt, and you've got to deal with entitlements to really address the debt.
Now, on the sequester, the Senate agreed to the sequester, and the president agreed with the sequester originally, but nobody thought that it would come to pass. It was sort of a game of chicken, the way, I mean, in my view. I mean, did you see it that way? And now that we are in a sequester, the Democrats are howling that, we've got the nerve to actually let this happen.
Well, it was the president's idea, and he proposed it. That seemed to be the ultimate. Never thought they'd come to that, but we held strong. We held firm. We didn't waver. He thought we would waver and vacillate. He put all these threats. Armageddon was coming, and the whole thing.
Sure.
But we held tight. And I was proud of our conference that in large percentage, we all were fully committed to make that happen. And that was not easy because he's in a position to make us look, like we're trying to destroy the country.
One of the great powers of the presidency is the bully pulpit.
Absolutely.
And he has that, and he can galvanize public support when he wants to, and he can get a lot more media attention than you can or any one member of Congress.
I think it's turned on him some.
Yeah.
This White House gig, we can't have White House tours. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
I closed down 145 regional airports he was going to. Now he's backing off of that. It just happened that those regional airport towers were contract labor. They were not union people.
Right.
Those are the ones he happened to want to shut down.
What a coincidence.
Now they're backing off on those.
Yeah. What are your relationships within your conference and in the Congress in general? I know you have good relationship with for example, Marco Rubio. You have personal relationships there, and others. What are some of your relationships, and how have they helped you? Have people taken you under their wing and sort of helped you along to get you going so you can sort of hit the ground running?
Well, I respect them all. I respect John Boehner. I do, our speaker. I think from the time that I've been there with him, and I've heard a lot and observed from afar, he has been a man of real principle, and he has listened to the conference, and he has been as conservative as I would have wanted or hoped for in trying to turn the ship around. He's been very strategic in it, very good strategist. Eric Cantor, I'm particularly close to.
Yeah.
Frankly, Eric.
Well, he came here to Charlotte to support you, during the campaign.
And he's coming back the end of May. We're very close. We do monthly breakfast for my freshman members that Eric and I co-host. He's a majority leader, and I co-host it for my other freshman members to help them raise support. So I'm real close to him and work with him on a lot of things.
And that's helped you, obviously.
Well, I mean, we're a team. We're there to support. The House is the firewall. If we lose the House in 2014, it's wide open. The president does whatever. He continues the further expansion, the restructuring of our entire society and our government. I mean, that's what he's doing.
Well, that's what we had in the first 2 years of this administration.
That's what every decision he's making, every commitment he has is related to 2014. He's already committed himself to 8 major fundraisers for the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee. Just had one in California last week, raised $4 million. He is on the prowl to go out and try to win back the House so he can continue to affect those efforts.
And people will say, well, you know what? That's his job. He's a lame duck president, and he's trying to help his party, and that's his political job. Now, we can get into questions when we say, well, does your political job supersede your job as executive?
Politics is everywhere.
Yeah, well,
and we've got to hold the line, and we've got to make sure we win the majority.
On that subject, you have surprised many observers, from who viewed your candidacy as a very hard conservative partisan candidacy, and then see you serving and look at you trying to build bridges across the aisle. Tell me a little bit about that. Sure. and how that happens, and give me an example or two. I know, for example, it was not your decision, but you sat for the State of the Union address with Joe Kennedy.
Sure, the third.
Was your partner.
That's right.
And tell me a little bit about that,
and
how that transpired, and the kinds of things you have been doing and are looking to do in order to get the people's business done across the aisle.
Well, first of all, look at my voting record, and you'll see as conservative a voting record as you can find. You don't have to change your principles. You don't change your convictions to establish relationships.
Yep, you're right.
And I'm just trying to cut through all the facade and relate to people. They're people. And we had, as I said, a half a dozen briefings and conferences together. There's about 85 of them, of us who are freshmen, so you get to know them. And a lot of the meetings and speeches we heard kind of helped jill our thinking that, we do have a $17 trillion debt.
Yeah.
We've got to address it. And so we wrote a letter to the president. I co-chair a group called United Solutions with Patrick Murphy out of Florida. And it's a bipartisan group of freshmen. We just absolutely implored the president to address the debt. He never brought it up in the State of the Union, and he never brought it up in his inauguration. And so we said, address the debt, go after entitlements. Nothing in there about more revenue whatsoever. The real funding, the real need is in saving Medicare, saving Social Security. And by doing that, you've got to find the ability to reduce our overall cost to reduce the debt. So I found common ground. Joe Kennedy, somebody I've had a bunch of meals with, he happened to come up to me on the House floor about a week before the State of the Union and said, Robert, would you consider sitting next to me in the State of the Union? I said, sure, Joe, be glad to. So that night, the State of the Union, I showed up, I thought, plenty early, about 8:15 for a 9 o'clock speech. And, the place was filled up,
Right.
So I found a few seats over toward the far side. The Republicans sit on this side, the Dems are all over here. So on the far side, I found a couple seats. Saw Joe, waved at him, and I pointed here. And he came up to me and said, do you think we could sit more toward the middle? This is real far right. And I said, oh, Joe, you Kennedys are so politically insecure. But sure, I sat with him, and
sure.
I didn't stand where Joe stood, and that was all good. And but you have to treat people with respect.
Yeah, and that does go a long way. And give us a little bit about. Let's talk a little bit about what your personal priorities are, what you're doing now. I know that, is it Kyla's Law or Kyla's Law? How do you pronounce it? Kyla.
Yeah.
Kyla's Law, I know, has been something that has been on the minds of people here in North Carolina, and it's obviously been on your mind as you serve us in Washington, D.C. Tell us a little bit about that and what it will achieve.
Sure. Well, very sad case of a young 3-year-old child who was just rammed into a wall. Has lost total brain capabilities, and sadly is paralyzed, spoon-fed, not coherent really. It's a very tragic thing. So when the DA goes to prosecute, the maximum he can prosecute is 7 years penalties for sentencing. Well, when we looked around the country, found out there are other states that had that kind of minimum sentencing. Some of them are 15, 20, 30 years for this type of egregious child abuse. Well, the federal government grants money to states for child abuse programs. And what we're saying is, if you're going to take federal money, if you're going to take tax dollars, we want you to have a minimum standard for sentencing. So my bill calls for a 10-year minimum in terms of sentencing. We've had bipartisan support. This is, again, where relationships make a difference. You go back to those people you've built a relationship with. They're not afraid of you. And so we have a very strong bipartisan support that we're building for this bill.
And give me a timeline as to when you think that might come for a vote.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say things in Washington don't move quick. I mean, everything takes time to process. You've got committee, may probably go through a couple committees. It'll take probably 8 months or something like that, maybe more. It just takes time to process. But we've had very favorable response for the bill so far.
I couldn't imagine that you wouldn't. I mean, I don't know, who on earth would be against such a thing. What is the argument against it?
There's really no argument. There's some people who are absolutely resolved that we should not have we should not pre-dictate to states anything they should be doing. Well, I'm agreement with the 10th Amendment, but there are federal monies that are being given out,
right?
Taxpayer money.
And federal money has always historically had strings. Whether it's transportation money tied to the speed limit on the interstates, or there's always strings.
If you're going to take the money, then there should be a standard. We don't think we should have lax and loose laws, particularly on some of this egregious. A lot of it, frankly, it's an oversight. In North Carolina, I don't think that they didn't realize that the sentencing structure was that low for this type of crime.
Wow. Immigration reform, a huge issue now, and a contentious one, and one that has not followed clearly political partisan lines. There's a lot of fuzzy areas, people on both parties supporting different ends of immigration reform. Where do you land on this? And talk to me a little bit about where you think it's going, and are you active on this issue, and how are you active on the issue?
I think we all have to be active. I do want to see what the bill comes from out of the Senate. There's two things that are absolute requirements for me. One is the rule of law. We can't absolve the rule of law and say that we're going to do something that precipitates that. I mean, that would precipitates anything other than the rule of law.
So, but what does that mean? Well, when you say the rule of law, and I'm in agreement with you. So, but I just want to make clear, what does the rule of law mean? Does that mean when you're here illegally, you're here illegally? So we have to say, well, you're not following. The first thing is, we're not following the law here.
Yeah. Well, that means that I'm not one who favors amnesty. Okay. The second thing is, whatever they do, the borders have to be. Not going to be, they have to be secure. Let's secure the borders first.
And that ties into national security as well, Congressman. I'm always, for example, as we're taping this this broadcast, we're having a real issue in the city of Boston, and it looks like we're dealing with people that have immigrated legally, but through, even our legal immigration laws have a lot of holes in them, and they're not consistent. And, I always look at it as when you're looking for national security, you have to look at what the parallel is your home. Okay, if you're concerned about security in your own home, you don't put an alarm system on the refrigerator. You put an alarm system on the exterior, on the perimeter of the house, the front door, the back door, the windows. That's where you put your security. And then if we want to protect our freedoms, in order to protect our freedoms, our borders must be secure so that we can have freedoms. Our freedoms are being eroded even with security in mind at the airport and traveling. They're an infringement, and we have those infringements because our borders are so porous that we have to have security at every step of the way. It impedes business, it impedes our personal liberty, so many issues.
After you've done that, though, if we've got 11 million people in this country, Wayne, I want to know who they are. That's the national security issue right now. There are people in this country, in working in subversive ways. We've got Al-Qaeda camps in Mexico right now. We need to know who's coming across the border.
And who's here.
And who's here, right? How do you do that? Well, I would favor knowing who they are. I'd like to see those people come out. I'd like to see them go down to the sheriff's department. I'd like them to see them go to the courthouse, wherever. I want them to register. I want a thumbprint, and I want a DNA, okay? I think that's the price they ought to pay.
But how do we do that?
Well, I think processes can work. I mean, to where you can do that. I think citizenship is precious. I was in a special event they had about 2 weeks ago to honor around 54 of them who had just been naturalized. They got their citizenship. And they asked me to speak. And they never had a member of Congress there. And these are people who've gone through the legal process. Right. It was a wonderful occasion. I met people from 21 countries.
Wow.
Laos, China, Paraguay, you name it. And these people hugged me. They were so sweet. It was so thoughtful. And I wanted to be there to just affirm them and express my honor to them for going through the process to become Americans. So to me, citizenship is something precious that we have. The other side of the coin is these people that are here, what do we do with them? I would like to figure out a way to bring them out, to give them some measure of status, not at all equal to citizenship, but where it would motivate them to come out from the shadows so we could find out who they are.
So a work permit of some sort?
Yes. I think, and you know, they've come up.
So their status would be legal,
yes,
but it wouldn't be full citizenship.
Absolutely.
And then they could possibly get in line with everyone else and go through the legal system to become citizens, or not. Or do they have to get, they would have to get at the end of the line? No?
I think you got to go back and totally start over to do that.
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, you need to re-enter the country.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I'm not for the path. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying these people are here, and we need to know who they are. We need to know who doesn't show up to register. And those are the scoundrels. When we find them for whatever reasons, catch up with them, they haven't registered. You give people 6 months to register and go through that process. I think it's critical that we find out who these people are, and then we give them some measure of, and most of them have been here for visas. About half the people who have been here have visas that have, expired.
Yeah.
And so that's my biggest concern is the national security issue for this country with these folks who are here right now. Many of them would talk if they knew they wouldn't be prosecuted, or they won't even talk to police sometimes.
No, that's an issue. Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, how do you open up those doors?
Right.
You take that fear away from them. You give them the right to work and be here. You don't give them the right for all the benefits.
So a guest worker program that is completely separate from the pathway to citizenship.
Absolutely. That's there's no connection to those two in my mind.
I see. Interesting. I mean, but I'm just curious, though, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but just sort of fleshing out the issue more. What would be different between that and having people who are here who do register and are going to follow this pathway, of a worker program, have them also be able to register as legal residents, non-citizens, have them apply for citizenship and apply just as you would if you were not in the country, and wait just as long and have to go through the same process and get no preferential treatment. What would be wrong with that?
I'm not for any, just as long as I'm not into the pathway thing. That somebody's guaranteed that they're going to have something after they do this, this, and this.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
That's the difference.
But the access to the system and the access to the process should be available to them too. Exactly.
Okay. No problem with that.
Where do you see? Let me just. I want to go through. We got how many? We're short of time. Boy, we could sit and talk for a long time, sure, Congressman. But let's talk about our Second Amendment rights and where you stand on that, and where you see it's pretty much of a strong-arm public relations campaign on the part of even the mainstream media. And on the part of Democrats and a few Republicans who have been trying to change the Second Amendment and water it down.
Wayne,
where do you stand?
Wayne, I think it's disingenuous to throw something out there to the American people that we're going to do this and we're going to fix the problem. That's not right. A lot of people have been hurt severely. Their families are damaged forever. And to throw something out to them that, well, we're going to pass this, as a result, we're going to do this. I've talked to sheriffs, you know, in our region. I have researched this forever. And all I can say to you is, if you could do something that would fix it with guns or background checks, well, great, let's consider it, but it's not real. We have fundamental problems in the country. We have mental health disorder issues. We can't even access the mental health needs that people have. Sheriffs can't get access to it. HIPAA laws restrict all that. So, as I said to the president's assistant who came to see me week before last, pushing me on this bill, I said, now, I don't recall, has the president come down as strong on his friends in the media about violence as he has about the NRA? I mean,
and the people in Hollywood, and the people in not just the news media, but also.
No, that's what I meant. The Hollywood. When I said the media, I'm talking about Hollywood. Has he come out on those Hollywood friends who give him all this money?
No, you're talking to somebody who comes out of that culture. I mean, I lived and did network television for 20 years, as you well know, and I fought that battle there, Congressman.
So,
you know that.
You know, we had kids and people in Texas a couple weeks ago were stabbing people with knives. You know, how are you going to stop them with this law? We have drugs that are pervasive.
We have a culture in the music business, in the film and television industries, that is creating a culture of violence and a culture that is disconnected from anything that has any morality to it. And what's happened, and this is not a partisan issue, this is just a cultural issue that's happening in this country. And as a result, people, adults and young folks, they're being numbed to violence. We're not shocked anymore the way we used to be. And that's the great fear that I have. I can't go and watch a Texas Chainsaw movie. I never could. And I don't ever want to, because I don't ever want to not be outraged by that violence.
If somebody who's bad, who wants to do something bad, wants to perpetrate evil, they'll find a gun, no different than somebody who wants to find drugs, finds drugs. We've outlawed drugs, people still find drugs.
I just don't want to ever water down our outrage at the violence.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. We've got less than 30 seconds. If people have issues, what issues do you need to hear from your constituency on?
I want them to contact us, first of all. We have wonderful offices here in Charlotte and up in Mooresville. We're here to serve.
So contact your office on any issue then.
That's right, pittenger.house.gov. Go to us, and we're there to serve you.
And the whole half hour is gone, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I really had to rush you right in out of an airplane, so thank you. Wayne Powers with you. I'll be with you again soon. We don't know when, we don't know where, but you keep an alert out. Okay, thanks for being with us. Until that time, my friends, until that time.